watch this, planning how to get out is as important as planning how to get in. I've had several businesses, and one thing that I was never taught was how to have an exit strategy. Yeah, I've had a couple of different businesses, and I've come to learn that it's important to have a strategy on how to get out of the business. Y'all not going to talk to me. Because you have to deal with the what ifs. Yeah, you have to deal with the what ifs. What if this happens, or what if that happens? Well, planning is good, but what if? And the what if is not always negative, by the way. It could be, what if it blows up and really makes me some money, how am I going to get out of that, what I put in it? What if? Then on the other extreme, it could be negative and is falling down around you. How do I get out of it and still keep my good mind? Are y'all with me? It's a difficult thing sometimes, but we have to have an exit strategy. I want you to know that Jesus is our exit strategy. Do I have a witness in here? Jesus is our way out, so that our way out is better than our way in. Y'all ain't going to talk back to me this morning. The death, burial, and resurrection of Christ provides us more than a covering for our sin. The covering of my sin is important. I don't want you to minimize that. It's important. It helps me along my life's journey. Not only does it cover my sin, but it gives me the power to live right. Yes, it gives me the power to live right. The result of sin in the experience of Adam and Eve made my life more difficult. Romans 5 and 12 says, wherefore as one man's sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and death passed upon all men, for we all have sinned because he sinned. So the entire world rests under the condemnation of the sin of Adam, and cursed according to Genesis chapter 3. Are y'all with me? Because the essence of sin lies in the denial of the divine will of God. In other words, God said, do it this way, and I did it that way. And that's the story of some of our lives even today. God has said, do it this way, and you did it that way. God said, go this way, and you went that way. God said not to do that, and you did it anyway. God said, stay away from him, and you went to him anyway. God said, stay away from her, and you went to her anyway. That is our nature. Our nature is to do what God said not to do. So we are subject to the penalty of our sin. And the penalty of sin is death. Don't get me wrong, I get ecstatic because my sin is covered, but salvation consists of two parts. Sin covering and resurrection. We typically use the term the finished work of the cross. But Jesus did not stop, or the work was not finished just on the cross. Y'all better hear me. In fact, it wasn't finished when he rose again. Y'all ain't gonna talk back to me. Yeah. An offering, first of all, had to be without a blemish. So when they brought their sacrifice to the temple, it was examined by the priest. And if the priest determined that the sacrifice was without blemish, then the person who brought the sacrifice laid their hand on the head of the sacrifice and then killed the sacrifice as a substitution for what was supposed to happen to them. Y'all ain't gonna talk back to me. The priest then received the blood and sprinkled it under the altar of the temple. The blood had to be presented to God, for without blood substitution. So Jesus took my place for the penalty of my sin, but that was only part of it. If salvation was to be complete, it was not only important for him to die, but it was important for him to rise again. Because if Jesus did not rise, I cannot rise. If Jesus did not come out of the tomb, then I don't have life everlasting. If Jesus didn't rise, then he's still in his tomb, and I don't have the right to the tree of life. If Jesus didn't rise, then when he said, I go to prepare a place for you, that was a lie. And I don't have a place in heaven. But because he did rise, I can face tomorrow. Because he rose, I can be healed. Because he rose, I can find my way out of no way. Because do I have anybody in this room that are just thankful that he rose? He says in the text, y'all still here? Y'all mighty quiet. He says, tarry here or stay here in the city of Jerusalem until you be endued with power from on high. Remain here in Jerusalem. Now, you have to understand Jerusalem was the city of peace. And so what Jesus is saying, he says, he wants you to remain in a posture of peace. Remain in a dimension of peace. When peace like a river attendeth, when sorrows as sea billows roll, whatever my lot now has taught me to say, it is well. Do I have anybody in this room through matter thick and thin, through hell and high water, through this and that? It's well. So, I've been through some stuff, going through some stuff, sick sometimes, worried sometimes, at loss sometimes, don't know what way to go sometimes. My children act up sometimes. My family turns their back on me. But whatever my lot now has taught me to say is well. It's well. He wants us to live in an environment of peace. Because peace means without hostility. Peace means without antagonism. Peace means without strife and without dissension. It means without anxiety. Jesus wants us to hang out in an environment of peace. He said until, touch your neighbor and say until. Until is a preposition that modifies or qualifies something else. It's a designator. It designates. Stay there until. Until what? Stay there in Jerusalem until. It's a qualifier. It says you got to stay there until something. You have to stay there, honey, until you are endued with power from on high. That's why you can't move. That's why you can't go off the deep end. That's why you can't throw in the towel, because God's got something in store for you. You have to stay there until your mind gets right. You have to stay there until your healing takes place. You have to stay there until your loss comes back. You have to stay there until you can find